This week, we're going to be looking at the latest information from Antarctica in a roundtable discussion. We're going to be looking at some news stories concerning UFOs and the Bible. We're going to be looking at the exploration and settlement of the moon under the Artemis Accords, some of the latest information concerning David Grusch's testimonies on whistleblowers, and new testimony that up to 30 extraterrestrial spacecraft have been recovered and are being secretly reverse engineered in corporate laboratories.
You're listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Well, welcome to Exopolitics Today, the week in review. We've got quite a few stories to go through, so I'm going to try and be as quick as possible to try and keep this under an hour. So let's begin by going to my Twitter feed. Again, for those of you that are maybe new to this, I will report on the tweets or X's, as they are now called, from the Twitter or X feed. So if we go to that, I want to begin by looking at this roundtable discussion I had with Elena Danaan, Jean-Charles Moyen, and Danny Henderson on her YouTube channel, where we discussed the latest reports that we have, or information that we have concerning Antarctica. Now, both Jean-Charles and Elena Danaan have been to Antarctica, and they were taken there. In Elena's case, it was through an extraterrestrial intervention. Jean-Charles through a teleportation experience. Incredible information, but they both saw each other down there in the Lake Vostok area. So they have very interesting information to share about that. Of course, I have a book that I've written about Antarctica that's called Antarctica's Hidden History. So that's definitely a roundtable discussion worth watching, and we will all be presenting at the Galactic Spiritual Informers Connection Conference, which is going to be held in Orlando, Florida, from October 20th to October 22nd. So definitely worth going to that. You can find more by just going to the YouTube channel where you had this. Or you can go to the website galacticspiritualinformers.com to learn more about that conference. So let's move on now to the next story, and this was very interesting. Fox News put out a story on UFOs ETs in the Bible. So that's interesting that this would appear on Fox News. And so there you have an opinion piece written by Lieutenant Colonel Robert McGuinness, talking about the Bible and UFOs. So I guess this is just another sign that there is this push, this effort to educate the public about UFOs or UAPs, to get them up to speed about what the implications for all of these revelations are. Because there's a lot coming, and I think what we are seeing now is public officials really moving into high gear to educate the public about this, not to be caught flat-footed, because there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be very upset and angry once this information is revealed, and getting ahead of what's coming is very important. And that raises the whole question about, well, what does the Bible have to say, or what is the implications of UFO disclosure on the Bible? So that's an opinion piece that's well worth taking a look at. So let's continue on. This was a very interesting story. Here you have a story appearing on MSN.com saying that the moon is open for business, and by 2030, there's going to be a rush of entrepreneurs making billions of dollars on the moon through various initiatives, whether it's tourism, whether it's mining, whether it's research, various ways in which that is going to be happening. And this is all being made possible because of the Artemis Accords. The Artemis Accords make it possible for countries and corporations to basically go out to the moon and profitize, to make profits from it, because the 1967 Outer Space Treaty essentially said that the moon and outer space is the common domain of humanity, which at the time it was presumed that, well, if the moon's resources were ever harvested, exploited, that they would be shared for everyone. So that would mean sub-Saharan Africa would get the benefits of the moon being mined or tourism or whatever is happening out in space. But with the Artemis Accords, what you have is a set of bilateral agreements with the United States being at the hub, NASA being at the hub, where nations that sign on are free to send missions, send rockets, establish bases to exploit the moon. So clearly, we're talking the major spacefaring nations, European nations, the United States, Russia, China, Canada, Australia, all of these nations with space programs, they will be very active on the moon. And under the Artemis Accords, they will be given a certain degree of protection. The Artemis Accords actually have something called safety zones, that any signatory to the Artemis Accords, that whatever they're doing on the moon or in outer space can be declared a safety zone, so no one can interfere with that. And if someone does, then you can have means for that safety zone being protected. So that's where you get the United States Space Command coming in. So the Artemis Accords are a kind of a rubric, an umbrella for like countries allowing corporations to go out there and do business in outer space. So it's a very important framework. Of course, the big winners are countries that can afford, to have corporations that can establish a presence in space and then bringing back the profits of that to that country. Whereas countries that don't have a active space program, they're going to be the big losers. Whereas the 1967 Outer Space Treaty envisaged that no country would lose out from the exploitation of space. So that's just the sad aspect of the Artemis Accords, unless something changes with that. So here's an update from JP that I did, that was put out at the beginning of the week on Monday, and that is JP escorting a Nordic VIP on what he called a TR3B, but it's a kind of smaller version of the TR3B. And that's a very interesting incident where you have JP and his squad going to a country somewhere on the other side of the planet. They left from somewhere in the Florida region, and they ended up somewhere like Asia, so many hours away. But of course, the TR3B gets there much, much quicker. And they picked up this Nordic extraterrestrial who was very friendly, and they were prevented from talking to him. And they just really escorted him from there to this military base that I've been to. JP has taken me to that base, showed me around. So this Nordic was taken to the same base and dropped off. And that essentially, it really just, the update described what happened during that trip. And so I think people found it very interesting that there is still this process where you have people within the military that on the one hand are getting the information out, but on the other hand, there's an attempt to suppress it, because the pilot would not allow the squad that JP was a part of, that military squad, to talk with this Nordic being. So we're not sure if it was an extraterrestrial or whether it was an inner Earth being. Okay, so here we move on to another story. General Mark Milley, who is the chief of staff of the Pentagon, and he is saying he made a statement that UAPs or UFOs are genuine, that they are a real national security threat, but he's seen no evidence of a cover-up of extraterrestrial life and technology. So the obvious question is, well, is he just part of the cover-up? Is he just covering it up? Or is he actually just out of the loop? I mean, that is very, very possible, because people assume that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff would by default have that information. But really, in his capacity as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, I mean, his main duties are to kind of ensure that the Pentagon budget is satisfactorily represented and pushed for in the Congress, that he is in charge of administration and training, and for briefing the president. But none of that may require being knowledgeable or read into the extraterrestrial phenomenon. So he might genuinely not know. He might not have been briefed about this. Whereas the people with the need to know are the generals who are in charge of the 11 combatant commands in the United States. There's 7 of them that deal with the regions, different regions. Northern Command, Southern Command dealing with North America or South America, Central Command dealing with Asia and so forth, or Space Command dealing with space starting at 60 miles above the atmosphere, which is the von Karman line. So everything above that. So those commanders, they will know about anything that happens in their area of responsibility, because they have a need to know. They are in control of all of the military services. So the Navy, the Army, the Air Force, Space Force, the Marines, in a particular geographical or functional area, it's these combatant commanders that have a need to know. So they are the ones that make decisions about command decisions. So that's important to point out. Or Milley may have been read in to a certain degree, and is just covering it up. And that is also a part of the unacknowledged special access programs. I wrote an article about this once, which deals with a corporate draft set of guidelines for meeting security classification requirements for unacknowledged special access programs. And this is something, if you just type in astropolitics.com, you'll go to my paper. You'll see my paper, astropolitics.com, where I discuss the security provisions for unacknowledged special access programs. So if you're read into an unacknowledged special access program, you are obliged to deny the existence of that program. So Milley could have been read in to one of these USAPs, or several of them, and he's required to deny the existence of such programs, or deny anything associated with that program, such as the secret reverse engineering of captured extraterrestrial technologies. Okay, so here's another very interesting development. According to multiple sources, a remote village in Peru has been under attack by tall grey aliens. Some describe them as green goblin-looking beings, and this has gotten a lot of attention in major news and also the alternative news. And so a lot of people are wondering if this is the start of the false flag alien event, and that is very possible. It does have the kind of look and feel of a bad sci-fi script that is being pushed, that is being put out there to kind of like direct the general public in a certain way of thinking. And so this is a multi-layered facet. I mean, if you're looking at a false flag event that is going to be staged, you're going to have various pieces kind of like all being played to prepare the public for this event. So this remote incident in a Amazonian village in Peru, and Peru, by the way, is known to be a place where there is a ongoing program involving U.S. special forces, those involved in covert retrieval of spacecraft, there was a disclosure project witness called Jonathan Weinard, as I recall. He appeared in the Disclosure Project book that was put out by Stephen Greer in 2001. And he discussed an incident, a crash retrieval operation in Peru in the 1990s. And he described how there was a team there already. By the time he was sent to look at it, there was a covert team there. So Peru does have teams of special operators from the United States who are trained to find and retrieve extraterrestrial spacecraft or engage with extraterrestrials themselves. So the fact that this village is being attacked by beings that are supposedly extraterrestrial does raise the possibility that this could be something that is staged. There is the capability to do that. So there's going to be much more on this coming out in the weeks ahead, but this could very well be the start of a false flag event or something that is going to lead to other events that are going to allow some kind of public emergency to be declared in different countries concerning a UAP threat. So we'll see how this plays out. Okay, so there's another story here that I wanted to cover, which is, okay, so the deep state clearly is very upset with David Grusch's testimony. I already mentioned Mark Milley. David Grusch, for those that need to be reminded, I mean, he was the one that appeared at this July 26th hearing for the House of Representatives Oversight Committee's subcommittee on national security. And so he talked about these government corporate reverse engineering projects. And so he talked about that. And what I find very interesting is that there's been pushback, official pushback. I mentioned last week that there was an official pushback by Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, head of the Arrow office, and Susan Goff, the spokesperson for the Pentagon. Both pushed back and said there's no evidence for anything that Grusch has said. And now we have Mark Milley saying the same thing. And now we have a story appearing where some of Grusch's testimony has been, Grusch's medical records and some police records have been circulated. That these have been leaked, or at least a journalist received a tip-off so that he could find these documents and then reveal them to the public. So this is also a part of an attempt to discredit Grusch. And what I find very interesting here is that you have Chris Cornwell, who is himself a deep state figure, or someone that has certainly in the past played a role in promoting the deep state agenda. And then it's at a certain point when the deep state no longer has a use for you, you're jettisoned. So like his brother, Andrew Cuomo, clearly worked for the deep state as governor of New York. And then he didn't do something. And so then he was removed through a scandal. So the deep state is very good at this. They can play people. And when people don't want to do what they do, they just come up with a scandal to remove them. And of course, Chris Cuomo had to move from CNN, and he's now on this News Nation network. And so here he's interviewing Ross Coulthart, an Australian journalist who's defending David Grusch's credibility. So I find that very interesting that these former deep state players are now there defending David Grusch. So very interesting what is playing out. So I think there is a kind of back and forth between different deep state actors. So now let's move on to a conversation I had with Thorhand. This took place, I believe it was around July 8, and just came out. This was the second in a two-part series of conversations I had with Thorhan Aredian, and he talked about how the Earth was taking control of our solar system. And so there's my conversation with him. You can listen to it online, or if you want, there is a transcript available. So if you go to my website, you can listen to the interview on YouTube or Rumble, or you can just read the transcript. And there's a few noticeable things here about the transcript or about that interview with Thorhan. I mean, he's talking about the construction of a hub in our solar system that's being built just above Jupiter, in the atmosphere of Jupiter. It's going to be placed in the orbit of Jupiter, and it's going to be a diplomatic and trading post for galactics to come to our solar system and to trade with our solar system. And there's going to be representation for the Earth at this hub. So something like, for those of you who watched the television series Babylon 5, something like that, where you're going to have multiple nations or multiple planets being represented at this place. But of course, the Earth will have its representatives there, conducting trade, conducting diplomatic relations, doing all sorts of things. And space tourism, there's going to be a lot of tourism that's going to go back and forth between the hub and the Earth. And it's very interesting that just today, this is being recorded on August 11, that you have the inaugural Galactic Virgin space tourism flight going out today. And this was something Thorhan was discussing, saying that right now on Earth, you do have these space tourism or these corporate space launches happening, and that's going to be kind of like the prototype for future space tourism to the hub. So in the future, we're probably talking by the end of this decade, because Thorhan has said that the disclosure process is being rolled out. There's a slight delay from the perspective of the Galactic Federation, that 2024 is going to be when you're going to have the full rollout. But we're watching some of the things rolling out now at an official level. But the full rollout, he's saying, is now going to take place by 2024. And so by the end of this decade, there's going to be anti-gravity spacecraft that are going to be commonly used. These companies, whether it's SpaceX, whether it's a Virgin Galactic, Blue Origins, they're all going to be upgrading from rocket-propelled spacecraft to anti-gravity spacecraft that uses free energy or these advanced nuclear fusion engines for being able to propel them long distances in a fraction of the time. So people will be able to, by the end of this decade, I think, be able to visit places like the hub and see what it's like to be, whatever it is, 500 miles, 1,000 miles above Jupiter's atmosphere, which would be an enormous thing. But that's something to look forward to. So the hub, and of course, one of the things that I think was also very significant was that he said, by and large, countries are lining up with this alliance that has been built up under the Artemis Accords, with the United States at the core of that. Now, in 2021, I covered reports from Elena Danaan about the Jupiter Accords, where the United States Space Command was made the lead nation in coordinating all the spacefaring nations on Earth to take over responsibility of our solar system. And so since that time, we've watched the Artemis Accords taking off and expanding. And at the moment, I believe we have 28 nations. Argentina was the most recent nation that signed on to the Artemis Accords. And on the other hand, you have China and Russia being outside of the Artemis Accords. Now, with Russia, Russia's a special case because even though on a geopolitical level, Russia has been ostracized under sanctions, in the covert programs, they are still working closely with Space Command. Russia is still part of the International Space Station Initiative. And once the geopolitics blows over in terms of what's happening in Ukraine, Russia will slowly come back into the orbit of the United States NASA Space Command. Whereas China is very clearly setting off on another path. It doesn't want to align itself with the Artemis Accords or Space Command. It's building its own space navy. And China has the economy, has the population to be able to become a real threat. And China does work with the deep state. This is something we discuss in that interview. So, yeah, China, as far as what's going to be happening in space over the next 30, 40 years is very important. And the Artemis Accords are an attempt for the US to put together a multinational coalition to ensure that China does not become the dominant space power in the future. Because a communist China being the dominant power in space would be a disaster for the planet. Now, if China undergoes a revolution, has a more democratic government, well, then that would be a very different animal altogether. Okay, so here is Timothy Alberino, who actually spent a decade in the Amazon, speaks the local Amazonian dialect, talking about the ET attacks there in the Amazonia. Now, he believes that these are genuine 7-foot-tall grey aliens, and that these are behind these attacks. So he thinks that these are real extraterrestrials. Now, the question, well, first of all, you can go to his website and you can check it out. So there's Timothy Alberino's website or YouTube channel. Just type in Timothy Alberino, and you can see aliens attack village in Peru. He has this a 1.5 hour, 1 hour, 48-minute story on that. And I'm going to be interviewing him as well on Monday, and we'll put out that video or that interview sometime next week. So he's spent time in the Amazon. He knows about these villages. He's lived in the area. The legends or the stories of extraterrestrials attacking these villages is not new. It goes back some time. So, so he believes the incident is absolutely real, that it's not, that these were 7-foot-tall grey aliens, probably related to this incident in Las Vegas that happened on May 31st, where there was an incident where a family reported a crash, and there was footage of a crash into a backyard of a Las Vegas home, and the family living there saw these beings that were about 7 foot tall. Timothy Alberino believes that these are 7-foot-tall greys. Now, the question is, are these genuine greys? Are they programmed life forms, as someone like Stephen Greer claims? Are these greys that have been living on the Earth for some time? Because I believe, based on the information that I've gotten from multiple sources, that the fleets of Orion Greys, the Draco reptilians, have left our solar system. I know there are people that are saying, no, they're still here. I think the fleets have left. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't have some rogue greys here, or that there are kind of like nests or clusters or bases of greys that have been here a long, long time. That is very, very possible. And the greys are very good at being able to use portals to be able to come in and snatch people, do things like that. So that's the very interesting question. So I'll be talking to Timothy about that during our interview next week. But this is, I think, an important story to keep in mind. I don't think it's going to go away. I think, like the Las Vegas incident with the shooting star and the ET appearing, these attacks in Peru, the shootdowns of the UAPs or the UFOs in February, all of this is building up to something that many believe is going to be the false flag alien invasion or attack. So we'll see where that goes. Okay, so here's a hit piece. I think it's a hit piece on UFO whistleblower David Grusch that appeared on the Intercept. The author of that, Ken Glipperstein, he actually received tips from people within the intelligence community, and he doesn't hide that. He's given an interview, and he's quite honestly said he's received a tip, and he doesn't believe this UFO stuff. So he's a skeptic, and he thinks that, well, he doesn't believe this UFO stuff. Like a lot of people, I think people who are veteran journalists, they treat this UFO topic as a joke because they have been around for a long time. They're very bright people, and if there was any reality to this UFO phenomenon, they would know about it because they have such good connections. They have such experience, pretty intelligent people. So if there was any truth to it, they would know. I mean, how many times have you heard that? But I think Ken Glipperstein falls into that category. So I think at some point he's going to get a shot. But for now, he's a skeptic. He got a tip that there was some dirt on David Grusch, and so he happily explored that, did the research, dug in, did a FOIA request to the sheriff's department in some county in Virginia, got some dirt on Grusch and ran with it. And you can see from the headline, clearly designed to discredit Grusch. UFO whistleblower kept security clearance after psychiatric detention. I mean, the implication here is that, well, the guy was psychiatrically detained. Why didn't he lose his security clearance? And if someone with that kind of record is testifying to Congress about classified reverse engineering projects, why should we believe him? Okay, well, clearly, I think that is a hit piece. Grusch himself, in his original interview on News Nation, he actually spoke about him having problems with PTSD. He's an Afghanistan veteran, and he was quite open. He had problems with this. So no real surprise here, but nevertheless, people have been kind of like looking at this and raising questions about his credibility. And the guy said he had problems with after finishing active duty, and one of his friends, a fellow intelligence officer, committing suicide after Afghanistan. That he's suffering PTSD, struggling with alcoholism, and he was suicidal at a certain point, and the police were called in. Okay, fair enough. I mean, I think people that go through that process, I mean, they should be supported rather than discredited. But nevertheless, I think there are people that want to use that kind of information to discredit him. So that's what's happening. But nevertheless, we will see that it's not just David Grusch talking about this. There are others. Okay, so today, August 11, I released the trailer for my upcoming webinar that is going to be looking at major UFO disclosures are coming in the US and worldwide in the closing months of 2023. So that is something you can watch. It goes for about 4.5 minutes. And you can watch that on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, and Odyssey. And, I present in that, I narrate it with Angelica Whitecliffe, my wife. So she helped me with the narration. And the person that helped with the videography is Jazz Marlin, who's actually been helping with a lot of the video productions for Exopolitics Today. So thanks to Jazz for that. So that is the trailer for the webinar that's coming up on August 19. What's coming for the rest of 2023, worldwide UFO disclosure and future predictions. So I look at all of the developments that have happened this year and what we can safely say lies ahead to the end of 2023. And I think there's going to be some really huge developments. I've already mentioned the likelihood or possibility of a false flag event. That'll change things dramatically if that happens. We'll also have Congress passing legislation, further congressional hearings, other nations, France, Britain, Russia, the United Nations even, are also getting ready to launch their disclosures because, make no mistake, other nations looking at the United States at the moment are concluding the US has green-lighted disclosure, and that is now in the pipeline. So by 2024, I think we're going to have things coming to a head with full disclosure, but in the remaining months, I think they're going to be critical for setting all of that up, and we're going to have some major disclosures. And the big question is, the big wild card in all of this is, will the deep state play its false flag wild card? We don't know. It could well be. So definitely something to be aware of. And for those of you that want to support my exopolitics research, this is how you can do it. I mean, I make all my articles, all of my interviews, they're all for free. And I've been doing that for 20 years now. 20 years, you go to exopolitics.org, you get all my articles, all my interviews, they are for free. If you want to support my work, you can do it in two ways. I don't ask for donations. Two ways: buy my books, attend my webinars. That's all I ask. If you can do that, then you support me, and I'll continue to put out a lot of the free stuff. And for those, and people benefit from the free stuff. So for those of you that want to attend the webinar, thank you, because you do support me, and that means I can keep putting out a lot of the free material. Okay, so now we get to this article that was put out by the Daily Express, one of the British tabloids, and it's commenting about a recent interview that Michael Shellenberger, who is also an investigative reporter, and he interviewed a lot of insiders, probably some of the same people that David Grusch interviewed. And Michael Shellenberger has said that somewhere, that he interviewed dozens of insiders. David Grusch has said he knows of up to 40 insiders, people working in corporate military programs, special access programs, dealing with extraterrestrial technologies that have been recovered and are being studied. So, of course, people are trying to discredit Grusch, but Shellenberger, an investigative reporter, has confirmed that Grusch's testimony is accurate, that there are people, high-level insiders, that are saying, yes, somewhere between 12 to 30 extraterrestrial or non-human spacecraft have been recovered and are being secretly studied and reverse engineered. So that is kind of like really groundbreaking, that information. That information is spreading and sending shockwaves. Now, for those of us who have been following exopolitics, that's really just the ground. That's really, that's the ground. That's the entry level. That this stuff has been recovered, and it's being reverse engineered. Then you get into the reverse engineered technologies, the secret space programs, and then you get into the extraterrestrial contacts and the agreements. I mean, these are future disclosures that are all going to have their own way of impacting the public consciousness. But for now, if you start off with the UAPs, what are they? You peel that layer back. The first layer is going to be, some of these UAPs have crashed and they're being studied and they're being reverse engineered. So that first level of the onion has been peeled back, and this is what people are seeing, and it's a shock for a lot of people. So this is important because Michael Shellenberger, he's on the record, he's very credible, he's saying that Grusch's testimony is accurate. And that's important because, as I said, there's been pushback against Grusch. People are saying, well, there's no evidence of this. Mark Milley, Sean Kirkpatrick, Susan Goff from the Pentagon, all saying there's no evidence that these alien craft have been secretly retrieved and are being studied in corporate military facilities. No evidence for that. And of course, you have that hit piece in the Intercept saying, well, Grusch is someone that was that was detained or put into a psychiatric evaluation unit and surprisingly held his security clearance and trying to discredit the guy. Michael Shellenberger, his testimony is important because it shows that David Grusch is not alone. Others have spoken to these very credible first-hand eyewitnesses who are working in these reverse engineering programs. Okay, so that's the Shellenberger interview, and you can go to that Express story, or go to my Twitter feed and you'll get the link to read that story and go to the interview where he talks about this. Okay, so now we go to, I want to finish off by looking at what happened in Lahaina, Hawaii. And of course, first off, I want to condolences to anyone that's lost their home or lost family members or friends in Lahaina. It's tragic what's happened there. I've visited Lahaina several times. Actually thought about living there for some time. We actually were doing some house hunting. We lived in Hawaii on the Big Island for 17 years, and we were thinking Lahaina would be a nice place to go to. Now, of course, it was burned down, and there's a story here on Axios where you can see what happened before and after shots of Lahaina. The before shots, you can see Lahaina there, all the buildings, some greenery, and here, of course, Lahaina's been burnt down. Now, the thing to keep in mind is, look at this surrounding area of Lahaina. Lahaina, like the Big Island, like the west side of the Big Island, there's a lot of kind of volcanic lava fields. There's a little bit of shrubbery there, but not much. I mean, we had wildfires on the Big Island regularly every year, but these rarely hit a town, very rarely hit a town, and only caused a little bit of damage. Again, you can see more satellite images showing Lahaina, some greenery. Again, look at the surrounding vegetation. There's very little of it. So this, there wasn't a wildfire around Lahaina that caused this because there's nothing there. I mean, you can see, this is lava fields. We have these all over the place on the Big Island. Lava fields, very little vegetation, nothing substantial that would cause a town to be burnt down. And again, here, more satellite images. So, there's a lot of conspiracy theories that are already circulating saying, well, was this caused by some artificial mechanisms, directed energy weapons, that sort of thing. Now, at this stage, all I can say is that it's suspicious. There's no evidence to say that it was caused by a directed energy weapon. Lahaina is an old town. Some of those buildings were going back into the 1800s, very old. Certainly, a fire could ravage that, but and if you have a fire with high winds, it's feasible that something like this could start. Now the question is, official investigations are going to be starting. They're going to find out. But the important thing at this moment is there was no wildfire surrounding Lahaina that caused this. That this appeared to be something that started in Lahaina itself. Now, whether that was just some natural accident, a fire caused by hurricane winds somehow, and then fanned by the winds to engulf the whole town really, really quickly, we don't know. Certainly suspicious, but still, my heart goes out to those that have suffered personal loss from friends or family. It's a devastating thing. And I lived on the Big Island. We went through something similar with the big lava flows from Kilauea, or from that took out some of the surrounding towns in the Puna region of Hawaii. We just left that Puna region, and entire communities were destroyed by lava fields. Thankfully, there wasn't loss of life. I mean, the lava moves very slowly, but with this hurricane and fire there in Lahaina, a lot of people lost their lives, at least 50, could be as many as 100. So very sorry to hear that. Investigations are going on, and it's important to ask these questions, because we know that there are directed energy weapons in existence that have been used in the past to start things. Paradise, California comes to mind. And the deep state does manufacture distractions for itself. And I'm not saying this is what happened in Lahaina. I'm just saying that this is a possibility. We need to investigate that closely. So that is really all I wanted to cover today on the Week in Review for Exopolitics Today. Again, if you want to get the references to all these stories that I've covered, go to my Twitter feed, or I think you can still go to twitter.com/Michael Sala, and that'll take you to my Twitter feed or X feed. And again, if you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to share and like this. This is the way to kind of get ahead of the algorithms that do shadow ban. There is a lot of shadow banning happening with Exopolitics Today. This is something that is very unfortunate. Certain content is shadow banned, and this Exopolitics is increasingly being shadow banned. So thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting my Exopolitics research, and thank you for being a supporter for Exopolitics Today.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Sala. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Sala. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.